Most people think they missed their chance with expensive cars, but almost no one realizes the real regret is hiding in the cheap ones they ignored. Right now, there are cars sitting in plain sight that used to be laughed at, overlooked, or dismissed as boring, and today they are quietly turning into some of the smartest buys anyone could have made. And the worst part is, most people only recognize their value after the price doubles and the opportunity disappears. There is a pattern that keeps repeating in the car world, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The cars that become valuable are rarely the ones everyone is chasing at the moment. They are the ones people underestimate. The ones that feel too ordinary, too cheap, or too forgotten. I have seen this happen over and over again, where a car sits at the bottom of the market for years, then suddenly demand shifts, nostalgia kicks in, or people finally realize what they overlooked, and prices start climbing fast. And today, we are going through 5 cars that followed that exact path. Each one was ignored for a different reason, and each one is now making people wish they had paid attention earlier. But the last one is the one almost nobody saw coming, and it might surprise you how quickly it changed. The first car is one that used to be everywhere, and that is exactly why people ignored it. The Ford Crown Victoria was once just another fleet vehicle, something you saw as a taxi, a police car, or just an old sedan driven by someone who did not care about cars at all. It had no status, no hype, and no excitement around it. Most people saw it as outdated the moment it stopped being produced. But here's what people missed. This car was built like a tank. It had a body-on-frame construction, something you almost never see anymore, and an engine that could run for hundreds of thousands of miles with minimal issues. Mechanics loved it because it was simple. Drivers loved it because it was reliable. And now collectors are starting to appreciate it because cars like this are not being made anymore. A few years ago, you could find one for almost nothing. Today, clean examples, especially retired police interceptors, are getting harder to find, and prices are quietly rising. People are starting to realize that this was one of the last true durable American sedans, and once that realization spreads fully, the cheap days are gone. The second car is one that suffered from an image problem. The Acura TSX was never a bad car, but it was never seen as exciting either. It sat in that strange middle ground where it was not flashy enough to attract attention and not cheap enough to be considered a basic option, so it stayed under the radar. But here is what changed. Over time, people started looking for something different. They wanted reliability, but they also wanted a bit of driving feel, something that felt connected and responsive without being complicated. And that is exactly what the TSX offered. It had sharp handling, a solid engine, and a level of quality that aged incredibly well. Now that newer cars are becoming more complex and less engaging to drive, people are going back and rediscovering cars like this. And once they do, they realize they could have bought one years ago for a fraction of what they are starting to cost now. The regret is not loud yet, but it is building. The third car is where things start to get more interesting, because this one was not just ignored, it was misunderstood. The Lexus LS400 was seen as too quiet, too smooth, and too focused on comfort. In a world where people were chasing performance and aggressive styling, this car felt almost invisible. But behind that calm exterior was something remarkable. This car was over-engineered in a way that is almost unheard of today. Every detail was built with precision, from the engine to the interior to the way the doors closed. It was designed to compete with the best luxury cars in the world, and in many ways, it succeeded. At one point, you could pick one up for the price of a used economy car. People did not see the value because it did not scream for attention. But now, enthusiasts are starting to recognize what it really is. A piece of engineering history that represents a level of quality that is becoming rare. And as that recognition grows, so does the demand. The fourth car is one that people actively avoided because of assumptions. The Mazda Miata, especially older generations, was often dismissed as too small, too slow, or not serious enough. It became the subject of jokes, and many people never gave it a real chance. But those who actually drove one knew something others did not. This car was not about speed in a straight line. It was about connection. The steering, the balance, the way it responded to every input. It created a driving experience that felt alive. And that is something that is becoming harder to find. Over time, more people started to realize that driving enjoyment is not about horsepower numbers alone. It is about how a car makes you feel. And suddenly, the Miata went from being overlooked to being one of the most respected driver-focused cars on the road. Now, clean older models are becoming harder to find, and prices are climbing steadily. The people who once laughed at it are now the same ones searching for one, wishing they had understood it earlier. And now we get to the fifth car, the one that almost nobody saw coming, and the one that is creating the fastest regret right now. The Pontiac G8 was not around for long. It came and went quickly, and because of that, many people never even considered it. At the time, it felt like just another sedan trying to compete in a crowded market. It did not have the brand strength to stand out, and it disappeared before it could build a strong reputation. Most people moved on without thinking twice. But here's what they missed. Underneath that simple exterior was something special. A powerful engine, rear-wheel drive, and a driving experience that felt much closer to a performance car than a typical sedan. It was one of those rare combinations that do not come around often. As Chimmy passed, people started to look back and realize what this car actually offered. And because it was not produced for long, the supply is limited. That is when things started to change. Prices began to rise, and interest started to grow quickly. Now, finding a well-kept example is not easy, and the people who ignored it when it was cheap are starting to feel that regret more than ever. If you step back and look at all 5 of these cars, a clear pattern starts to emerge. None of them were the obvious choice at the time. None of them were surrounded by hype or excitement. In fact, their biggest advantage was that people underestimated them. And that is the real insight here. The best opportunities are often hidden behind doubt, behind assumptions, behind the idea that something is not worth paying attention to. Most people follow what is popular, what is trending, what everyone else is already chasing. But by the time something becomes popular, the opportunity is already gone. The people who win in this space are the ones who look a little deeper, the ones who question why something is cheap, instead of just assuming it deserves to be, the ones who notice quality, uniqueness, or potential before everyone else catches on. Right now, there are still cars out there sitting in that same position, ignored, underestimated, waiting for the moment when people finally realize what they are. And when that moment comes, the shift happens fast. So the real question is not just which cars people regret missing. It is whether you are paying attention early enough to avoid making the same mistake again. Because a few years from now, the cars that seem boring or overlooked today might be the exact ones everyone wishes they had bought. And once that shift happens, you cannot go back and get them at the price you see today.